when we become the designer of our life, we usually have to introduce tools in our life to help us, because where is the problem? The problem resides in our thought patterns, and we have to learn how to manage them. Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I like to stop and welcome our guests because time is one of those precious commodities that they are here to share with us. And I want to acknowledge that and say, Betsy, thank you for coming and sharing your time. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created you, and it deposited a couple of things that we want to extract: your wisdom, your knowledge, your insight, so that we can become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken. Very happy to be here.
It is an honor. Here's the question that I told you about. As I mentioned in talking about, we have the two journeys, the independent and the interdependent journey. And that question is based on the interdependent journey. How do you serve mankind?
So, my whole mission in life is to improve and empower the lives of others. I feel that if my presence does not positively impact somebody's life, then why am I here? So I hope I do that in several ways, but tangibly, I created a nonprofit that helps the cost burdened families in our community. We live in the highest cost burdened county in the state of Florida. And so I created a nonprofit that helps build affordable housing for those families, because the house is a foundational building block for so
Yeah.
many other things. And it's a launching pad for that family and the future of that family. I hope I do that through how I interact with my staff and my agents. I run a brokerage, a real estate brokerage, and a couple of other businesses related to real estate. I always look at my customer is not the buyer and seller of homes. It's the people that work for me and my
Hmm.
companies. And so every morning, my first question to myself is, how may I serve? And how may I
Yeah.
serve them? They don't serve me. How can I serve them? And so it's not just for me about sales skills and developing their negotiation things and things like that, but it's also, how can I help them lead a more fulfilling life? And so we do a lot of different exercises, like the Wheel of Life exercise. And I help agents and staff identify 6 to 8 life pillars to make sure they have a balanced foundation, because I, at one point in my life, found myself having very few life pillars. And when when you're sitting on a 3-legged stool, 3 pillars in your life, and 2 of your pillars go out from under you, you land up on the floor. And I did that found myself there at one period of my life. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that again. And,
Yeah.
and so trying to shore up the foundation of a life, we're taught so many interesting things in our structured education, but we're not taught how to build a life, how to get along
Hmm.
with people, and how to manage finances. Like, those are 3 incredibly crucial skills to be happy in this world.
And
And
who to marry is
yeah,
another one.
yeah, yeah. And
How
so
to marry,
I just feel like sometimes our educational system's misaligned with the bigger objective here. But anyway, so those are the 2 things off the top of my head that I can think of that I'm helping create a better place than when I got here.
And one other thing that she hasn't, in our humbleness, mentioned is also she has a book, Breaking Boxes, and we're going to talk about those principles and how she became an author with that title concerning boxes. So one of our customs here, as you know, is to go back in the beginning of our beginnings. We have a genesis in our life. And that Genesis is our family unit, and we reside there for a short time, and we have some lessons to learn there. We usually acquire some things, our traumas also we acquire there, but we learn about how we communicate with others, how we show up in the world, if you will, on a daily basis is began to form right there. What was your family unit like?
So I'm one of 3 children. I've got 2 sisters. I'm the baby. I do have an identical twin sister,
Uh-huh.
but she was born first, and I was definitely treated as the baby, and not
Yeah.
as we weren't treated like as a unit. We were definitely treated as the baby in the family. Great family, very supportive parents. Their foundation, their values were spirituality or religion. I grew up Catholic, had to do well in school, had to always be in a sport, had to always go to church. Those were the 3 things in our family that were very key to my upbringing. And I'm very grateful for them for what they've done. They provided me a great education. Their goal was to have 3 daughters that got out of grad school debt free and they did
Yeah.
that. And so I'm very privileged. I know that. I think no one can do everything for everybody, and I think what was missing that I saw now as an adult that, I'm trying to make up for lost time is, 1, just the feeling of joy. Joy was not a value in our family, and having fun was not it was always, like, very, very driven and very, like, "What's next? What's next? How can we achieve?" And so that's something that I don't wanna say struggled with, it was just absent in my life for a long time, and so I've really had to make a conscious effort to bring joy and fun into my life. And then the other piece that was missing was the whole emotion and feeling side. It was a home of very cerebral home, very intellectual home, very let's look at the facts. What do you think, Betsy? What do the facts tell you? But feelings were definitely the messaging was they were wrong, they were fleeing, they were unreliable, unstable, don't depend on them. So I learned to ignore them
Hmm.
and got really good at that, and I think that hurt me in some ways as I was and I'm still it's still for me, I sometimes feel like I'm kindergarten in terms of understanding what my body is telling me, what do I feel, and really relying on those feelings
Yeah.
instead of quote unquote facts, which can lead you astray. So
Yeah.
that was my upbringing.
Yeah, and the undervaluing of one's emotions and emotion as a part of this human race of ours is very important in order to connect, if you will, to some of the language and the that the body is trying to say to us, trying to speak to us through that emotion. So here, this girl has learned how to basically move through the world, if you will, with logic
Uh-huh.
as she's moving through life. And you're heading, as you said, your parents stressed education as you're going through school and you're heading into college. What field of study did you pick and why did you pick it?
So going into college, my sisters and I all went to the same college. We were all pre-med. We were all destined to be physicians. That's what was kind of
The
ingrained
program.
in us, programmed in us. Since we were little, we would go to the hospital where my dad worked and we volunteered in the summers. And it was just the expectation that we would be physicians. That was considered the best life.
Mm.
And so I did that. And then, but I was miserable. I didn't like the pre-med classes. I knew this was not for me. And it wasn't even for me. And I don't know if it was something that I internalized. It was probably, I think, a mixture of both, but it was definitely in my family, like it was the most esteemed profession. There was a value judgment. And so in my junior year, I was dabbling in business courses and I've always loved business. I mean, I was in the 4th grade and I was running a fuzzy pencil shop out of my 4th grade classroom selling pencils to my classmates. And I had always loved that, but that was not considered a viable career. And
Hmm.
so, but anyway, in my junior year in college, I had made a phone call to my parents and told them that I was getting out of the pre-med track and that I was going to pursue a business degree. At the time, the college that I was at only had an economics degree. I was
Hmm.
not interested in being an economist, but that was the business major in that college. And so I majored in economics and then had to tell my parents that I was not going to grad school right away, which was that was I was told that I was lazy, that I would never go back to school. Because it was never, "What are you gonna do in college?" It was always, the medical school. And then for my sister to go off to medical school and I went to get a job, that was definitely I was definitely the black sheep. I went
You
back to
weren't
business
pursuing the
school.
good life, as you stated, the best life, as they say.
Yeah.
The degree is the medical degree is the best life,
Y
and so
yeah.
here you are, definitely, as you state, the black sheep in the family, and you are asserting some independence because the it sounds like a family that is very strict on certain things, and coming out of that, breaking tradition, if you will, is going to cost you something
Yeah.
within that family. How did you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely I went down a couple pegs on the wrong in terms of their perception. I did.
Yeah,
And I
I
sometimes,
know,
you know, I feel like I've struggled with that because,
of course.
you know, I think I grew up feeling like my worth was definitely defined by my output and my like the degrees and the
Yeah.
profession. And then no, I felt like I only really regained my rank in the family once it became clear to others that I was successful in real
Yeah.
estate, and
Yeah.
that saddens me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it did impact me. I think, especially at that time, I would never have admitted that to
Hmm.
myself. I wouldn't have known how to process that, but I knew I'd be miserable following being a physician. So at least I chose myself. I was able to strong enough to choose myself. Like right now, I feel like I'm a totally different person. But
Yeah.
back then, I am surprised I had the courage to choose myself over, because it was an incredibly strict
Yeah. The
boundaries. There
traditions of
were
the family.
traditions, and it was like, you don't cross these lines, and
Yeah.
it's, once you cross a line, you don't ever redeem yourself.
Hmm.
So yeah. So I don't know how I handled. I think I chose myself, which I was grateful for. I stuck to my guns. I did go back to business school. That was always my plan,
Hmm.
you know, even though they thought I was copping out, but to get into the school that I wanted to get into, they required 2 years of work.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
did that, and then I went back to business school, but I still stayed in the pharmaceutical. I stayed in the industry. I stayed in the healthcare industry, in part to, I think, appease me and them, feeling like I wasn't going to be a physician, but at least I was going to stay in the industry they wanted me to be in.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I got laid off. The company that I was with had a corporate layoff because we didn't get FDA approval on a drug that I was working on. And I found myself, I was, I was single. I was kind of unexpectedly divorced when I was 31. I had 1 and 2-year-old daughters. So having those two events happen very quickly in my life, when my life didn't have a whole lot of other things going on, my
Yeah.
job, my marriage, and my children, that's what I referred to as the three-legged stool. And two of those legs, disappeared. Then I had to kind of regroup and figure out, okay, what am I really wanting to do here while I'm on this journey on earth?
Yeah. That took a lot of courage to do what you did. And as one is moving through life and you're in their eyes slipping into darkness, if you will.
It's so it's so interesting, because it's funny, because like I feel like if you put myself in another family, I would have been
Yeah.
like praised, but in my family, I was definitely the rogue child.
Yeah. So here you are, Betsy, slipping into darkness, if you will. You're laid off from the job, and this is trauma. This is trauma coming your way. As you said, two of those legs broke, and that other loss of job, loss of your security, husband, family, all of it, just boom. And here you are at this wonderful juncture in your life. What was the decision, the conversation that you have with yourself to begin to move you through from all of this? Because this is where everything, the rubber meets the road, at the beginning, if you will, of your self expression in determination, if you will, that I'm going to make this happen.
Hmm.
What was that language to yourself like, and what steps did you take?
It's hard. I mean, that was almost 25, 30 years ago. So that's
Hmm.
25 years ago. So it's hard for me to remember what language, but I do remember.
I can figure some of it.
Well, I do remember. So even though I even though I struggled with self-worth,
Hmm.
I've never struggled with self-confidence, which
Yeah.
a lot of people confuse the two. But
Yes.
but I had so many, and I'm very grateful for the house I was in. I mean, there are certain aspects, as you said, everybody had trauma, and
Yeah.
this was mine. There was a poster on the top of the stairwell that we had a 2-story house, and I would go up and down those stairs multiple times a day. So at the top of the stairwell, my mother had put a poster of a girl. I used to run. I still run, but I used to run a lot. And there was a picture of a girl that looked very similar to me. And atop of the photo, or the poster, was the quote, "I believe in me."
Mm.
And I think that it's something that's been ingrained in me. I've, I have always felt a high level of self-confidence. And so at that time, I felt like, okay, I knew I was smart enough to figure this puzzle of life out. And so I went on this journey. I've always been very, very curious. So went on this journey of, okay, how do you create a life? And read incessantly about that. And
Yeah.
that's when I first came across that wheel of life exercise, where you identify 6 to 8 life pillars, and making sure that not so much, it's not like a balanced life is, an hour here, an hour and here, an hour here, but it's a balance of of a complete life. So you have your spirituality, you have your
Hmm.
health, you have your finances, you have your career, you have your hobbies, you have your contribution and giving back. And really, I wrote it down on paper and figured out, okay, what does my future look like? What do I want it to look like? And that was the start of living life by design and not by
Yes.
just this programming that I had always had in my head. And it was my choices, not what my parents and society and everybody else was telling me. I had never done that before. And
Yeah,
so,
most of us don't. That's because we live off of the program until I call it the day of visitation. And the best way I could use, and I use this as an example for people to understand what it is. I love Bolero. The music is absolutely one of the best songs known to man. Ave Maria is another one. I'm saying stuff I shouldn't be saying. But anyway, Bolero is, I tell people, a representation of us. The little thumping, are the red signs, the red flags that we have. Most of us are not programmed to pay attention to them because the default program is work, 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 get out, go to school, work, work, work. And so we don't pay attention to that. And this bolero keeps playing this song. And then at some point you hear this crashing cymbal. And that's when we pay attention. And as you stated, you said, I am smart enough to figure this out. You are now becoming the observer in your life, in your world. And when one becomes the observer in their world, they have just begun the journey. Because what you begin to do is question everything. Begin to question your decisions. You begin to question your process by which you are making those decisions. And then one other thing that you pursue is data, knowledge. Why? Because you are going to figure out, how do I do what I just said?
mhm,
And when we become the designer of our life, we usually have to introduce tools in our life to help us, because where is the problem? The problem resides in our thought patterns, and we have to learn how to manage this stuff. So, what
mhm,
tools did you begin to bring in your life to help you manage that
mhm,
world that is telling you that, hey, you're the black sheep of the family. Look at the sisters, they're successful. You're not successful. You just lost your job. You lost your husband. You lost everything. And these thoughts are coming from all over. And it's coming from those internal language and beliefs that we have inside as well. Uh, you and I now have to design our life from there.
mhm.
What tools did you bring in to help you make that choice?
The Wheel of Life one is one I still do every year. I mean,
Yeah.
and I do that with my agents. I just think it's unbelievable. I do something, a tool I brought in was called the future vision exercise,
Uh-huh.
where you write yourself a letter, 20 years from now, you're writing it backward and
Uh-huh.
you're describing your life 20 years from now. That's very impactful. I've started I dabbled in journaling, but really started journaling, getting my thoughts on paper. Meditation was huge for me. Yoga was huge, still is. All these tools I still use.
Yeah.
Getting in touch with my body, the feelings
Yeah.
wheel. I have a color wheel. Like, I knew what a color wheel was. I didn't know what a feelings wheel was. I mean, when I
Mhm.
first went to therapy, went to therapy too. I still do. And she asked me how I felt. And I was like, I feel pretty good. What other emotions do you feel? I said, and I thought it was like a trick question. And
Yeah.
I said, well, sometimes I feel bad. And she's like, okay. And what others? And I really had no other vocabulary to describe my
Wow.
emotions and feelings other than good or bad. And so she showed me the feelings wheel, which I felt like I was in kindergarten again, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and then in fact, now I have an app on my phone. It's called How We Feel, and it checks in
Yeah.
with you several times a day. And you plug in the bubble that describes the feeling,
Uh-huh.
and you quickly type in your environment, what you're doing, and who you're with. And it really helps you, because I would have a tendency, it's still not a habit that's ingrained in me.
Yeah.
Checking in with how I feel versus how I
Yeah.
think. And so I have to be reminded of that. So that's a tool. Try to think. I went on a couple of retreats. I did bioenergetic work. Um,
And doing those things and bringing these tools into your world, what did you begin to learn about you?
Probably the biggest thing and is for me is that, I was searching externally for this validation of
Yeah.
being whole and complete and being happy. And it didn't matter what I achieved or who thought what, I still was not happy. And so I think it taught me to understand that that comes from within. And that's probably the biggest lesson for me is that I'm in control of that.
Mm.
It's always been there. I was just looking in the wrong place for it.
I think most of us are because we were told as programmers. That's why I told you I love your title of your
Mm,
book,
but
Breaking, because that's what it is. We are
yeah.
in these box where the programmers, the main religions, we have religion that is a box that programs you and I. We have society that tells the role of a woman and a mom, and a man. That tells us and puts us. We have educational system that is going to program us, corporate America, the world, all these programs, these location that puts us in boxes. And if you and I, and they tell us that in order to maintain ourselves within the box, that you have to be normal. If
Hmm.
you're not normal, you don't fit into those boxes. And so
Hmm.
that's when all the less than conversation begins to happen. I don't look right. I don't this. I don't all the less than, and we begin to criticize the beauty of us, not realizing that we are the key. And so
Hmm.
as you begin, Bestie, to do these things and look inside and become aware that it's you who are responsible for your happiness, if you will, and your growth. How did that begin to impact you? Because now, as you stated, you are aware that you have to become in touch with your emotions and you're putting in tools and so forth to assist you with that. Knowing that you have to get in touch with your emotion and getting in touch with your emotions are two separate things. How did you begin to get in touch and were able to identify the new ones? And how did you express them?
So, this is the whole emotions piece is within the last couple of years,
Yeah.
sadly. So I am still new at that, but in terms of how I identify them, the checking in, just, I mean, it's very intentional because I have so much programming of bypassing that from what
Hmm.
I've learned in therapy is that your body is your first signal that
First thing.
something is amiss.
Yes.
But I am an expert at just bypassing
Yeah.
that neuron, or that pathway, and it goes right to the part of my brain that goes to thinking.
Yeah.
And so it's like, as the therapist says, it's like this, it's like you probably remember records,
Hmm.
vinyl records, and then there's
Yes.
the groove in the records. And it's such an
Hmm.
ingrained pattern that I have to get out of that. So that's why this phone will vibrate to remind me to check in, or I'll wear a rubber band on my wrist to check in
Yeah.
because sadly for me right now, it's still not a habit for me to do that. And I have a habit tracker, a daily habit tracker, and I put on habits that I'm working on for the month. And that's so, and I move off habits that have become ingrained every month as the calendar rolls to the next month. That's still a habit I'm tracking because it's not ingrained in me yet. So it's just being intentional about just taking its time out. Betsy, how are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? The other thing that was key is that for me is that I always felt like I had to justify or understand why I was feeling a certain way before I could move in a direction. So like if I knew something wasn't right, the feeling was like, Betsy, this is not the right decision to make, or this isn't the right person to hang out with, or, path A is not right. I'd always have to say to myself before I could even make that decision is, but why? Does that seem rational?
Hmm.
But I'm learning, even if I don't know why, it's okay. I can still go in that direction. That was huge for me because I always felt like I had to have this very rational reason why, and then I can make the decision. And it's like, no, I can actually make that decision on feelings alone, even
Alone,
if I
yes.
can't understand it right now. If my body is telling me this is not right, it's not right.
Yeah. The intuition is the aspect of us that man hasn't learned how to manipulate yet.
I love
And
that.
if ever they do, we are in trouble
Yes, exactly.
because the five senses, one can manipulate that,
Mhm.
all of them.
Mhm.
But that intuition, we haven't been, and the thing is, we haven't paid attention to it really as a collective, the human being. And lately in studies and data is being put together that that is a viable part of our decision process, if you will. Because my kids, I used to say to them, if it feels wrong, it is wrong,
Well,
because I know that that intuition, and I wanted to reprogram my children to pay attention to the intuition, because it has data that the natural mind does not have. It picks up energy, and the mind does not pick up energy, but your intuition does. And
love
so
that.
when we listen to that part or that aspect of us, it will save us from much pain. Because when you are embarking on a relationship, if you will, with someone that your intuition says to you, red flag, don't touch that individual, run, run, run. Because again, it's at the energetic level. But your mind will come and say, he or she is beautiful, handsome looking, like the same music, we exercise together, we love jazz. And next thing you know, you're in a relationship with that individual because you were disobedient to yourself,
Mm,
because it's you that told
mhm,
you that. And next thing you know, you're in the midst of this major heartbreak 5 years down the road,
mhm,
and you are broken into pieces because you negated to be obedient to yourself.
mhm.
That's life. That's how we get it all messed up. So here you are, bestie. Everything is going good, girl.
Yeah.
You began to put your life together. You're learning all these tools. You're writing it down. I love that. There's a principle that says write the vision down. There's
Yeah.
data that shows that those who write the vision down achieve it, and all these different things. So listen to this, to what she's saying. And she has been, I just love how she's expressing herself with telling you guys the amount of work that it takes to be disciplined in one's life to achieve an outcome, a desired outcome. It takes discipline. She has the apps, she has a program, she has different things. You must become a disciple in
Mhm.
order to obtain your freedom. There is no easy way out. Stop believing that. It doesn't exist. So here you are learning a lot of these things. And guys, I'm going to provide all of her links so you can get to see who this woman is in the realm of her professional achievements and stuff like that. It'll blow your brains out as to what she has achieved. And yet, while she was achieving all of these things, she was not happy. She has to go inside. Talk to us about that.
You know, I don't know how I ended up on that path, but I was on this path of it's always what's next,
Yeah.
and it was always what is the next milestone that I could get? What's the next award? What's the next sales goal? What's the next large client? It was always, even when I was running, it was always what's the next race? What's the,
Yeah.
it was always forward focused, and it was on the outcome. And then I would get there and crazily how quickly the joy dissipated. I mean
Yeah.
I mean, not like days and weeks, like hours. It
Yeah.
was insane. And the more aware I got of that, I'm like, this is not getting me. They're selling me a bill of goods that's that I took hook, line, and sinker, but it's just
Yeah.
not feeling it's meeting the expectations that I thought. And that's when I'm like, okay, I've got to start looking from within. And again, this part is just very recent.
Yeah.
I was on this journey. I'd gotten into the career I always wanted to get into. I truly love my job that I loved. I mean, I used to think you couldn't actually do well and love your job. I
Yeah.
thought those were two inconsistent things, but that was a blessing of the career that I chose, and I still love my job and what I do. But I was just feeling empty inside. And so yes, so and because joy and fun, I took this class in my journey, took a class,
Mhm.
and during the class they had you do a quiz, and it was wasn't one of those disc profiles or Myers-Briggs. I've done all of those, but this was more on, I think, life. And they identified you as a country. And so at the end of the quiz, I don't remember. I was in the country of control.
Yeah.
And so that was my highest country. I scored the highest there, and I had 0 points in the fun country. And I thought that can't be. So I took the quiz again. And I took it again, and sure enough, 0 points in the fun country again.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, this must be real. And it was a wonderful exercise, because then they would match the people who scored. So I was lowest in the fun country. They matched me with somebody who scored the highest in the fun country. So
Yeah.
I could see what their life was like.
Yeah.
This woman, I said, what's tell me. I was so curious about her life. She said, well, the first thing I ask myself when I wake up in the morning is, how am I going to have fun today? And I was like, oh my gosh, that was not a question I had ever asked in my entire life, let alone every morning.
Every day.
She greets her day, how am I going to have fun today? And I thought, it was earth shattering for me, like how my life would be so different if that was the first question I asked myself every day, And so I'm on this journey of trying to insert more joy and fun in my life, and understanding that it's not the destination and it's not the result. It's not the outcome. It's truly the journey, and who we become in that journey. That is what makes this life beautiful and incredibly rewarding. And we can't control the outcome, but it's who we become in this journey that is the purpose. To me, the purpose, versus always being focused on the next thing that's going to get me some dopamine hit that I don't want or need anymore.
Betsy, talk to me about the journey to the book. How did that begin? How did you begin to put that together? You're obviously on your journey, but then it carries you and takes you to this book that you're saying at some point you're like, wait a minute, I can put this together, because I love the tools that you talked about early that you started incorporating in your life and stuff like that. And as you're beginning to walk in your journey, you acquire more sensitive information or data, if you will, and you begin to notice things in your life. Talk to us about your journey to the book.
So the book is a result of all of those tools.
Yeah.
And feeling what those tools were screaming at me, telling me that the source of my unhappiness was feeling like I was in these boxes that no longer served me. It was like if you've ever had the misfortune of purchasing a bed mattress from Amazon. It arrives at your porch in a box. I haul it inside, rip off the tape, and I'm like, this is the wrong size. I ordered a king size mattress. This looks like my child's crib. And lo and behold, 2 days later, I've got a king size mattress. It's somehow filled up and is the size it was designed to be. So I felt like I was that mattress still in that box. And I had so much more joy and life and potential, but I was I put in it. It's not a victim. I fully put myself in the box as well, and did not allow myself to expand and be the full potential that I was created to be. And that was the source. That was the crux of my unhappiness throughout my life. And when I started sharing my stories with others, people would share their stories with me, and recognizing that this was a common human condition. I've got 2 dogs sitting next to me. They're not worried about boxes that they're in. They're not worried about what mom thinks today. And, mom thinks I shouldn't go chase that squirrel. And, I might fail if I go chase that squirrel. And then what would mom think of me? These are all human constructs. And it seemed like others were as stuck as I was at one point in my life. And so I decided to write the book, because I think I mentioned before we started to air that my whole reason for being on this planet, is to improve and empower the lives of others. And I thought, if I write the book and if it helps one person identify a box that they are in and helps them move towards exiting that box that's no longer serving them, it will have been worth my time. So that's how the book came to be birthed. And somebody asked me, like, well, how did you decide to write it? And it didn't decide to write it. It was like a birth. It was coming, whether I wanted it or not. It was going to be coming out of me. So that's how the book came to be.
Let me ask you a question as we close our interview. You have a mic. You're plugged into the 3+ billion people on the planet. what would you say?
I would say enjoy the journey. That's how I sign my books. That's what I try to do every day now
Mm.
is enjoy the journey.
I'm gonna leave it at that. There's a lot of us that we are afraid of the journey, but there's joy there. There's much joy, and as Betsy say, enjoy it because that's what we are here for, to enjoy the journey, so that we can become and to become whoever you want to be and whatever you want to do. It's up to you. You are the key. You are the source, and don't let anyone else tell you anything different. Betsy, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.